This is the exact UX presentation that I've shown to both Amazon and IBM that gave me UX design offers afterwards. So a really quick disclaimer, I feel there is no template for creating a presentation. Everyone's is going to look different and yours does not have to look like mine. But for the sake of transparency, I really do hope that my presentation, things that I've done, my mistakes could help you within your presentation as well. So without further ado, I'm going to open my Google Slides and let's jump straight into the video. Hi, my name's Sharon. I'm a third-year undergraduate student at Parsons School of Design, and for the two projects I'd like to show to you today, the first is an accountability app for college students. And to give some background, this was a solo project done over the span of 12 weeks. It was completed at a boot camp over my gap year called Springboard, and they allowed us to create this project on any project prompt of our choice. So going back to the initial problem discovery, as a college student, I've noticed how many of my peers and I were able to persevere towards our academic pursuits. We have, say, a really hard project due the next week. We might struggle a lot with it, but we always manage to power through, maybe pull a few all-nighters in order to get that project done by that deadline. Yet, on the other hand, if my friends would tell themselves, hey Sharon, I want to wake up earlier and set more personal goals, it usually never ends up happening or succeeding. So this sparked the question in me of why was there this disconnect between achieving our academic goals versus our personal goals? More specifically, the problem was college students fail to accomplish their personal goals as successfully as their academic goals. So I'm really passionate about personal development and everything, and before going into specifically this problem, before touching the visual elements of design, I started off with white paper research. I wanted to first dive into the psychology of goal setting, motivation, and the mindset needed. And during this research, I stumbled upon a really interesting statistic from the American Society of Training and Development. And this statistic was, people are 65% likely to meet a goal after making that goal public, but their chances of success increase to 95% when they have a specific accountability partner to report to. Personally, I have never heard about this before, and although I thought it was super interesting, I still just wanted to keep this in the back of my mind while I did other research and expand my horizon. So then moving on, since this space is more, goal setting and of productivity, I believe it is still a pretty saturated space. So I also conducted a competitive analysis of the 4 most popular apps within that space to see what was working or what could be improved and how I can reflect that within my own design. And with that, I found these 4 apps. Overall, I found that this competition had little to no aspect of this accountability to help the user achieve their goals. Stick, the second most app from the left, had the most accountability and accountability partners integrated. However, due to really bad UI, it was overall just reviewed really poorly and it ranked pretty low on the App Store. But overall, looking at the reviews of all these apps, users state that they can flake on their goals due to not enough pressure. They still didn't feel held down enough towards achieving their goals. And although I saw from my competitive analysis and white paper research that accountability was important, I wanted to hear firsthand my target audience's experiences to cater the final product towards their needs. I wanted to hear it from the user themselves. So with 8 students across a variety of majors, engineering, design, fashion, I asked them questions below to find some trends on why they failed at some goals versus others. Questions like, tell me about the last goal you set. What motivated you to start in the first place? What was the most difficult part of trying to achieve your goal? And most importantly, tell me you did have to do something difficult as a goal, but you yet pushed through and accomplished it. And with these insights, I organized all my data through affinity mapping. I took their quotes and put it together within an affinity map, trying to find like trends together, eventually forming 9 main insights and 3 main themes. So what did I find? And based on the trends in my affinity map, 3 major themes of community, motivation, and performance stood out. And then when I took a step back and thought about how these major themes also connect together, I realized they work with each other to promote this aspect of accountability. If you're within a community, you have a more positive environment to encourage you towards those goals. It increases then your motivation and hence your performance. But within this aspect of overarching accountability, more specifically, I found that my interviewees were 3 times more likely to succeed when there was indeed this accountability for their goals. I've noticed how if there's no real pain or consequence associated with not achieving their goal, as was the case in previous apps they used, motivation to continue ceased to exist. And even when mapping out the journey of this college student user, their process for going about a goal went like, they first start, they're very motivated, they have a lot of intrinsic motivation, saying this time's going to be different. Then they end up trying, maybe they're successful for a few days or a few weeks. But eventually that internal motivation does seem to wane and they eventually don't feel like it anymore. And usually it's at that point that they get stuck. So this compared to their academic goals, they too ultimately don't feel like it anymore. They don't want to finish that paper. But what was the difference? And the difference was there was a consequence. If I don't wake up earlier, nothing bad is going to happen. But if I don't finish my paper, I am going to get a bad grade. I'm going to maybe fail this class, something bad they don't want to happen. So most of that accountability was due to that sort of social or whatever type of pain or consequence. So now overall, I had a better understanding of my user, my persona. They like to set goals, but it's hard to stay consistent with those goals due to a lack of that accountability within that within that conflicting stage. So overall, this became my question for design. How might we make college students feel more responsible and accountable for their personal goals? So now moving forward to design. At first, when approaching the design aspect, I spent actually 2 weeks trying to play with 3 different directions, not even just in app interface, but even augmented reality, virtual reality, and also the app solution. However, upon thinking about the effects of each, I realized that through testing and talking to my users on a daily basis, using either augmented or virtual reality through, say, accountability classes that I've done, that was an idea, or an augmented reality mirror to help visualize their goals, might be more of a hassle and not as accessible versus the benefits of it just being an app solution. The same effects could be achieved through a simple smartphone app, hence I stuck to an app for the final solution platform. And this, just to give you an idea, here was the extent of how I tried going with accountability classes, but upon feedback, this seemed a little bit too George Orwell, 1984, of like monitoring what they were doing, so I totally scratched that idea. Then to determine the flows for this app design, I asked myself, well, what is the main point of this app? What is the easiest way to get the user there? Well, the overall goal is you set a goal, then you achieve it through accountability, and then it would also make sense to follow up with that goal and manage your goals, perhaps. And upon constant testing and explorations of various flows towards the main app design, I continually iterated this design over the span of 4 weeks with 4 major improvements based on various feedback from 8 of my student users. The first major improvement was removal of the bottom navigation. The homepage itself became the navigation towards major parts of the app. And the reason why that is because based on mentor feedback, letting the user naturally flow to the other parts of the app seemed to be a better fit. And at first, I desired a bottom navigation tab to allow ease of adaptation for the user, but then again, if the main point of the app is to help them get to, accomplishing their goals and setting evidence for their goals later on, which it might just be easier to cut out the tabs and go straight to the main task of the app. Secondly is switching to a broadcast feed. So overall, the way this app works is that you choose an accountability partner, you tell them your goals, and then you have to send evidence for your goals. And at first, the medium I wanted to send this evidence to was through a chat room. However, based on feedback, having a more social media-like feed to post your evidence encourages better behavior as it appears more public than a private chat. Also, if it was like just a chat room, why not just use iMessage instead? It seemed a little too, not as special as it could be for this app design. Plus, switching it to more of a broadcast social media-like feed allows instant gratification of likes and comments to encourage further use. The third major improvement is realizing how students desire habit-like goals instead of these major milestone-like goals. Before receiving feedback, I was first under the impression that students would like to set major goals like, they also want to start a YouTube channel or like do this really cool side project, when in reality, they told me that they're looking to have more consistency with repetitive goals such as waking up on time or drinking more water. And lastly, the fourth major improvement was a guided onboarding experience. So previously, when they first downloaded this app, I added some nice UI illustrations. However, upon speaking with my mentor, it was instead useful to have more low-fidelity UI that is indicative of how the app would work. Although the left-hand illustrations are a lot prettier, the right-hand side is more functional and useful. So that was the fourth major change. And then upon all this iteration and feedback, to move on to what this final solution and designs were, first is having accountability partners. As I mentioned before within my white paper research, you can increase your chances of accomplishment up to 95% when you have a specific accountability partner. They provide a source of extrinsic motivation to not get caught in the conflicting stage of the user journey. It prompts the user to want to avoid social consequences of not completing that goal. Secondly, to cater to the second flow, here is where you can track, manage, and execute all your goals at once. To cater specifically towards the college student persona, there is a schedule depending on the day to help cater towards your classes, and you can also customize and set different parameters for each goal as well. And lastly, and this is the most important part of the app, is not only do you set a goal and have an accountability partner, but you have to send evidence and engage with that accountability partner. You send a proof of completion of your goals, and this proof of evidence makes sure you lock down your commitments instead of possibly, you just say that you've done it when in reality you don't, and you don't have anything to show for it. You can see all of this within a larger accountability feed, which you see on the right-hand side. And lastly, the fourth major design of this app is considering the edge cases of maybe you want to push back a deadline or skipping a goal. Showed up to be very mandatory, as many of my student testers wanted that extra flexibility say if things did come up. Yeah, I had a super late night yesterday, like my car broke down and I just couldn't really do this on time. So having a bit more flexibility was something that was integral to the design of this app. Then to touch upon the design system and the style guide that I've created, I overall considered the color psychology, and I found that orange symbolized the color of motivation, hence that became my primary color. Plus, for the actual app interface, I looked at my competitors to see how they formatted their UI, how did they structure their interface for the home screen. So considering all of these into perspective, I created a bunch of different sketches and created this design system to stay consistent and use that within my own app design. And lastly, to note about the UI design, I also did change it from first a gradient to a more flat design, as I realized there are very little apps that use more of a gradient. It could cause readability, accessibility issues, and also the removal of the orange gradient better adhere to fit WCAG standards. Now, looking back on this project, if I had more time, I would really like to explore more the boundaries of scheduling more opportunities for college students. See different ways to increase accountability, maybe not just social consequences of, like between you and your accountability partner, but maybe there's a slight monetary consequence as well. Or even add flexibility towards different types of students. Maybe there are students who may not like habit-like goals, but maybe they do want more milestone-like goals for perhaps more larger goal they set for themselves. Plus, I would also like to consider WCAG standards more in terms of the accessibility of the design as well. And overall, the main takeaway and moving forward and what I might do differently is remember to always design with intentionality. And working fully through this project taught me the importance of doing that and thinking about every element of the project and how it ultimately would all come together to contribute to the end result. So that was a major case study that I presented. The second project is more of an NDA project, non-disclosure agreement, so I can't publicly show that here. However, I will just skip through it really quickly to give you a general sense of the flow. But it's pretty similar. You have the main page, you go into some brief details of like who your team was, what your role was, tools, general description, and same thing of doing the storytelling, of having the storytelling, what you've done, what has already been done, and go through that same similar process. So taking a look back at my presentation, I think what I've done well was that storytelling aspect of why we're even personally interested in doing that project prompt in the first place, you know, if it's not, say, like a company type of project. However, I think I could have just made some parts a little bit more concise and not seem as rambly. I want to know what you guys think. I'm always open to feedback as well. And also making the presentation structure really clean. Do not cram it with information. At most there should be like 2 to 3 sentences or bullet points per slide, and you just flesh out that visual sort of cue with your words within the presentation. One last thing, this was a major, I don't want to say mistake, but improvement that I noticed I should work on after I did these interviews was I was speaking to one of my interviewers afterwards, and he told me that although having GIFs of the interactions are nice, he wasn't able to see how those interactions are also intentionally thought out. So maybe screen sharing and showing like your actual Figma file prototype mode and then like clicking through it might be a better way to do it. But who knows, that's something for me to figure out. But if you have suggestions, feel free to let me know down in the comments. And before I move on, I do really just want to thank my bootcamp Springboard for helping me create this UX design project. Like literally, if I didn't take Springboard during my gap year, there was no way I could have either gone to Colgate, got the offer from IBM or Amazon. So, and if you were interested in like kind of honing your skills for UX design or creating a portfolio, do feel free to use my code Sharon Kim to get $1,000 off your UX design tuition, and I'll also leave the link in the description box below. I'm also going to give a very quick tutorial on how I like structured these slides so you could see what I'm doing. So let me go back to my computer. Alright, so you see here, this is my presentation. I've used Google Slides. You can use Google Slides, you can use Keynote, whatever you're comfortable with. And say if you are online doing interviews, what I would do is like, you know, you're most likely going to be on some sort of video conference. Maybe it's Zoom or like whatever video conferencing software that they use. But for setting up the screen, this is what I've done. So you do presenter view right here, and then it's going to show up like this. If you're video calling with them, they're probably going to show up as an icon or something on the sidebar or on the bottom, however it is. But what I would do is have like minimize the screen like this. So it's sort of, you know, say about this size, right? You see, I'm recording here, but you have that say on the bottom here, and then you have all your speaker notes, and you drag that to the top, and make sure it's actually within the middle of the screen. And the reason why that is because if you're reading off your speaker notes, if you do read off of them, they're going to be right here in the middle, and as you read off of them, your eye line is still like near the computer camera. So it's going to be hard to tell if you're like just talking to them or if you're reading off speaker notes. It seems a little bit more natural visually. Also, second thing I've done was write in the style that you speak in. Don't make it sound academic, as it doesn't sound natural speaking. When I was typing this up, I made sure to really like increase the font size so it's easier to read, and also I would highlight the heck out of it in yellows and greys, whatever, to make it easier for me to know where I am within the script. It really helped me to speak a little bit more smoothly. So you move that to the bottom, and when they give you the option to share screen, you're only going to share this one Chrome window. So do delete any other Chrome windows you have. Make this the only Chrome window you have, and once you do that, they're only going to see this screen. They will not see anything else. And here, to show you, here's like my other notes that I've done. And also, if you can with these slides and you mostly have a website case study already done, try to just reuse the visuals within your website case study within your actual presentation. All the ones that I've made were made in Figma. I just exported it, put it into my Squarespace website, then I also reused that for the presentation. I know it's definitely not perfect. Looking back, I do see a lot of mistakes. I even saw like some spelling errors, honestly, but overall, it's not about making it perfect the first time, but you just do it and then you keep asking for feedback and like you just keep improving upon it. However, I'm always open to growing. If you have any suggestions for me to improve, I'm more than happy to hear your suggestions as well. So do let me know down in the comments if you have any clarifying questions or things you want to see more of. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time.